Good morning on the West Coast and good afternoon on the East Coast. Today is October 13th, and I hope everyone is having a beautiful day wherever you may be. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and direct response advertising industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to yet another fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics, all in 20 minutes or less. And today we'll be continuing our conversation, our Back To series, by talking about back to travel. And I'm excited to share travel guru Kathi Moore of Fareportal is here with us today. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, and we encourage you to do so, please use the questions tab located in the control panel. And please note, you're welcome to ask a question throughout today's conversation, but we will hold all answers to the end of today's discussion. Alrighty, folks. With that said, it's my pleasure to welcome today's moderator. This guy doesn't wear a watch because where he goes, he decides what time it is. He's the fearless Chris Foster.
Well, thanks so much, John. I appreciate that, and welcome in everybody to another episode.
I didn't finish sharing who you were. I got to give your bio, man. Chris is the Vice President of New Business at Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris teaches brand strategies at UCSD Extension courses, and he's the chairperson of the PDMI's Brand Response Council. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here, and now, my friend, it's your turn to take it away.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and so glad to have Kathi Moore with us. Kathy's at Fareportal and is well versed within the travel industry, and we're going to talk about travel right now, right? So what we do know is that the travel industry got hit by a massive COVID torpedo. No questions on that. And so what we wanted to do is to go through some graphs, and we'll get through that in a little bit. But first, I want to introduce Kathi and kind of talk about the topic we're going to discuss. You know, there's some summer vacations that bolster the industry, and travel and hospitality were poised for growth in 2020, but you know, COVID happened, and we know that. Some recent statistics from Madeira and from Kayak showing some revival of bookings, but they're still down 25% or so over the same time 2 years ago. It's better than it was in January, but it's still down. So the questions that we all have are, how is travel going to be impacted going into 2022? Will there be a recession? Will there be a resuscitation of business travel? Since July, business travel bookings are doing well, and in October they seem to swing up. What happens next year? With the advent of Zoom or Microsoft Teams, do businesses not travel as much? Are virtual conferences going to take the day instead of in-home conferences? You know, what we'll do is really think through the impacts of travel, because not only business travel impacts the economy, but of course leisure travel does, and how comfortable people feel about traveling to different places in the country. So with us is going to be Kathi, and we're going to talk through some of these statistics. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show my screen, and I've got a statistic to show you. So Kathi, please lead us. This is from adara.com. On the left-hand side is flight volume by purpose. You can see kind of the trend. Right side is hotel volume by purpose. So Kathi, when you look at this in your business, what do you delineate and what do you see as, you know, areas where you're optimistic or areas that you're concerned about?
Well, I mean, I think the big story is, of course, business travel, which everybody recognizes. And hello, all. And by the way, I dispute the guru title. Thank you for that. But I'm no guru. I'm just an ad woman that's been working for a travel company for about 5 years. The leisure travel has been really, really interesting because obviously COVID shut everything down. And, you know, there was a point in the middle of, well, in March of last year where travel virtually came to a halt, and the entire industry has been trying to rebound since then. Leisure travel came back over the summer, but we saw a change. We saw, no surprise, a big swing towards domestic travel and much less international travel because there's so many countries weren't even accepting Americans, or those countries had issues with people didn't want to deal with. So we saw a big swing to domestic travel. And we also are seeing the birth, you were talking about what we're optimistic about. We are observing the birth of what's virtually a new category in travel. It's something that did exist before, but now it's more prevalent, and that is combining your leisure with your business travel. People are largely working remote. In the professional classes in particular, remote work is the thing. Tech companies, large tech companies like Twitter and Facebook have made announcements that they're not going back into their office. That's hundreds of thousands of workers. What that has done, and I've seen it in our numbers, our booking numbers, and also in my personal life and amongst my friends and coworkers, people are taking short little jaunts and working while they're doing it. They now have the opportunity to, if you want to rent an Airbnb somewhere for a week and just work from there, you can. So we are seeing an increase in short distance domestic travel. And that, that's a nice little point of light in what's been a pretty dark period of time for us. As far as
I just wanted to touch on that because we actually knew some folks from the recent PDMI West conference that was here in San Diego, which is a travel destination too. That exact thing, Kathi. A lot of people were combining the trip along with some vacation days.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and and that behavior, because PDMI has always been in such beautiful locations, I think that's been the case for PDMI attendees, many of them for quite some time. But you take that and then you expand that to, I had one of my staff a few weeks ago took a house in the Poconos for 2 weeks. I didn't know she was in the Poconos. She had Wi-Fi and our work was all the same. Now, in that case, she was driving, but that affects a car rental purchase and travel. While we're very flight focused at my company and we tend to talk about air travel, and these, as you can see, this is a flight volume chart from Adara, but travel is car rental and hotel just as much. So those are all good positive indicators, a type of rebound.
Fantastic.
Now,
we do have another resource that you pointed us to, and this is from Kayak, and it's showing flight searches and flight trends. And this is looking at a day-by-day look at flight search intent in the country compared to the same day 2 years prior. So for folks, this is down the very beginning, this is from 1017, you're down about 63%, 60% down, but you're starting to get up a little bit now. We know it's still down, but look at this, all the way up. July 1, 2021. Up 4%, just so close to moving up, and then it dips a little bit down. If you have a prognostication and a black Sharpie, Kathi, where do you draw this line moving forward?
You made me think of our former president there for a moment. Searches are at about 75% of what they were 2 years ago. We're continuing to see that move up, but we're not expecting to get back to 100% until well into 2022, perhaps June. The industry, the travel industry overall, the airline industry overall in particular, is preparing themselves for another wave, another COVID wave. Right now, what we're being told is to expect the cessation of the Delta wave and the onset of another variant wave sometime in the fall. So we're all reining in still. Those of you in the audience that might have clients that spend in the travel industry will know that spending is down. Most of the major players are back on television and back advertising.
I'm going to
budget.
Kathi, I'm so sorry. I think we lost your audio for about
greatly reduced prior to 2019. So we don't have to see search volumes go up exponentially until the middle of next year. All right. Am I having connection?
A little bit, yeah. We lost the last maybe 45 seconds. If you could repeat that, that'd be great.
I think I'm broken.
I'm definitely going to stop showing screen.
Oh, I was just saying that the airline industry, I apologize, I seem to be having internet issues. The industry is prepared for another webcam, if that helps. How do I do that? I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Is that better?
I can absolutely
hear
hear you. Unfortunately, everybody
Nope.
is only seeing me.
Okay, good. If you can hear. All right, well, they can look at Chris, and I do apologize, but I am having issues. No, what I was saying is the industry is prepared for another wave. The Delta variant is going to go away in the coming weeks, actually, experts are saying now, and we'll be dealing with another variant wave that's going to continue to put downward pressure on travel. So ad spending is still less than what it was, and search volumes should stay where they are, around 75–80% of 2019 until the middle of next year. That's the prognostication. Of course, no one has a crystal ball.
Well, actually, it's here. It's, you know what? You heard it here first on Take 20, folks. I believe it. So, so that being said, with you know, really travel being, you know, moved by these new variants, and you had mentioned even in the panel, Kathi, that you guys had a really dark day over at Fareportal on one particular day. But you recovered, and the business is kind of moving up.
Oh, yes.
What gives you optimism? What gives you excitement about the travel industry moving ahead in the next year or so?
Well, I already mentioned one of the things that gives me a lot of optimism, which is the idea that new types of travel are being born. This idea of the blending of your being able to work remote, therefore you can work from anywhere. So we're seeing increased domestic travel, short-term travel. We're seeing decreasing lead times for purchase, which is indicative of that as well. You know, somebody sitting around going, well, you know what, I'm just going to go to this place and work from there, and just making that decision spontaneously, unlike vacations, which are planned months or sometimes even a year in advance. In addition, you're seeing a lot of additional opportunity for road trips and blending fly to drive vacations. So we're creating packaging that gives people what they're looking for to take advantage of, to maximize domestic travel. And that could be domestic within the United States or domestic in country in other countries in Asia Pacific or Europe, of course. Another thing that's very, very exciting, it's not nearly as sexy, but it's very exciting if you're a travel tech company, which is what Fareportal is, and really all of the OTAs are at their heart and soul. And that's the idea that the pandemic sparked increased awareness on the value of travel technology in general. Less people traveling meant there was more focus on creating products and services that could entice the traveler back. And as a result, safety and hygiene information was never available. Now it's available on all of the leading OTAs. There'll be maps that you can click on and see what the regulatory environment is at your destination. I'm considering going to Dubai. What is the current regulatory environment in Dubai? Do I need to have a test? Do I need to quarantine, etc.? All of that has been rolled out. So tech has really fast-tracked on the travel side. And then the other non-sexy but super important thing is that this focus on customer service went up exponentially, because the systems and procedures for all of us were taxed in a way they'd never been taxed before. If you go from an average, like we do 10 million tickets a week. So you're doing 10 million tickets a week and you're getting 30,000 complaint or customer service, I should call them, phone calls a week. Those numbers went up 20x. Not the first half of the equation, not the ticket sales, but cancellation phone calls went up to 250,000 a week. And that was just one little company. So we're one group. The same thing was happening at every other travel entity. So each of those companies, and we did a great job at Fareportal with this, automated, made consumer-facing online cancellation forms and online refund request forms and online informational processes and procedures, and brought in a big way our AI-powered chatbot resources so that we could handle that volume. And as a result, big steps forward were made in improving customer service in a way that probably wouldn't have happened that quickly had coronavirus not occurred, had the pandemic not occurred.
It's interesting
So,
you mentioned that the adversity creates innovation, or at least it accelerates the pace of innovation that might have been already in the roadmaps. We heard that from the restaurant industry as well, when they had to pivot to curbside pickup and mobile app pickup and online, express delivery and the like. So I think that's a really interesting, optimistic avenue of what businesses needed to do to adapt and then spin around the changing customer behaviors. That's fantastic.
It was very impressive to watch as well.
Yeah, I bet. You had mentioned at the start of our call that there might be some interesting statistics on business travel beyond just the travel to work, to kind of do remote work. Are there any other ideas that you see for business? Do you see how Zoom and/or Teams and virtual conferences affect business travel and affect business conference travel?
Oh, absolutely, it's affecting it. What we've learned, I mean, almost no businesses were not terribly dependent, and I don't have any actual facts and figures on this, but I think we can all agree that most businesses use video conferencing very occasionally. It wasn't a regular thing for most companies. Now it's a regular thing. We're all aware of that. At the same time, in 2019, less than 25%. Okay. I'm looking at some numbers from Deloitte, their corporate travel survey from May of 2021. And we're at basically 25% of 2019 levels in terms of business travel spend right now, according to this fairly large survey. Now, the forecast is that by Q4 of 2022, 9 in 10 survey participants expect to reach 75% of their 2019 levels. So that's good news. That means business travel is coming back, but it also underlines the fact that business travel has changed. They're not anticipating, these survey respondents, and these were large companies and small, are not anticipating going back to 100% in 2022. Sure. And I think less essential travel will go away. And another interesting fact is that while we all recognize the importance of face-to-face contact at critical points in a negotiation, or to maintain a relationship, or to do a quarterly business review, that type of travel will continue. But the less essential types of travel, or perhaps the number of people involved in those types of trips, instead of an agency sending 6 people to a QBR, perhaps they'll send 2 or 3. So we'll see the numbers going down, and I don't see a big change in that anytime in the next 2 years.
Yeah, or ever, right? Because what you wonder if the new generation of workers, or the new generation of working, is a permanent change, right? So if you just mentioned that business might climb back to 75%, which means it's down 25%. It might be down 25% forever. It might never reach the levels that it used to be, simply through the changing demographics and changing workplace behaviors.
Right, agreed. And it's interesting, what's the old Irish curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, we're living in interesting times right now, so.
We are, that is true. So John, as host, we're already 21 plus minutes after. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Oh.
Time really flew on this one. It was like, it started and it was ending. So yeah, we've got some questions that came in, which is great. And Chris, as a lone wolf on the screen, you look beautiful. You did a wonderful job today. Kathi, your voice is fantastic, and thank you very much for being here. Yes, you look marvelous, Chris. Let me pull a couple questions.
And I apologize for my internet issues.
No, it's all right. These things happen. These things absolutely happen. Here's a question that's interesting, and Chris, you can weigh in on this as well, as a gentleman who knows a lot about a lot of topics. If you could only select 2 types of advertising mediums to welcome folks back to travel, what 2 medium options would you choose?
That's a good question. I think it also depends on the story that you want to tell. Kathi knows this very well. Video is a great way to tell a great story, to welcome folks back to travel. So whether that's going to be on YouTube, or pre-roll, or a video that you put in social media, a video storyline. I think that VRBO is trying to do it really well, right? They're trying to say, remember, you have these moments where, grandparent is playing chess with grandchild, right? You have this moment when they're off their phones, right? Trying to capture that travel moment and that intimacy and that family moment that can only happen with travel when you go away someplace, right? Away from your house, and you go to this retreat in this special place. Everybody goes there. That's a terrific story, and I think you can do that with film and with video very well. Strange but true. I also think you can do it with direct mail, because in direct mail you have the opportunity to tell a story, to remind folks emotionally of the benefits of those kinds of travels, to open them up to the idea of, hey, have you thought of coming to the Adirondacks or the Shenandoah Valley to work for 2 weeks, right? Because you can. And suddenly, instead of being in a small apartment that you've been in Chicago, come to the Shenandoah Valley and overlook the forest and the rivers and the trees, and you can still get your work done. Just the point that Kathi had made. So I think that the media or the channels that will work best are ones that can best tell a story that has some emotional punch and tells people, this is, hey, she's back. You light up a room. You light up a virtual room. So there are lots of different ones that do that, but I would focus on the storytelling moment of the beauty and the intimacy of travel.
Kathi, would you like to add to that?
Video is always king there's in some ways there's no other, in my mind, you need the visual and the audio to really tell a story. And then I would also say that promotion, DR, offer is still going to be equally as important, if not more, because people have gone through a lot. They want to do a lot more traveling, and they're going to be looking for deals even more than they were in the past. They're even expecting them. They're expecting to be enticed back into the travel sector, and therefore the power of a good deal, or crafting at least the perception of a good deal, is definitely going to be necessary.
Yeah,
cool. Thanks. Yeah, good feedback, guys. All right, here's a follow-up question for Kathi, and this one makes an awful lot of sense based on what you shared down in San Diego, where you guys had a couple of tough days. I think you said one day was 97% drop in business, which is scary. Kathi,
yes.
This one's kind of dedicated to you. What mix of media worked best for Fareportal as you started the regroup in 2021?
We're still basically in that regroup mix of media, and we're heavily SEM dependent. We're really putting all of our eggs, but in the case of Fareportal, we are the house that search engine marketing built. The company was in business for a good decade and achieved the status of the second largest seller of flights in the United States without doing anything other than SEM and some very small meta and affiliate work. So SEM number one, our affiliate channels number two, third in order, because this is our activation order. We've just started reactivating our meta partnerships with the kayaks of the world and those types of companies. And unfortunately, our company has chosen to stick with the promotional offer-driven approach. And as such, we won't be resuming our brand advertising for at least another 6 months. So we, unfortunately for me, are off air for 6 months.
Right.
Wow.
But the power, when it comes to an actionable transaction, and you're looking for transactions, particularly in an area of increased demand or decreased demand, I should say, you can't beat the power of SEM.
Right.
The rest will come back as it should.
Really good feedback. Thank you for that. Here's a question that you guys both touched base on at the start of the session, but I'm going to ask it anyways because maybe you can elaborate on it. As the world begins to heal from the pandemic, do you predict that leisure or business travel will bounce back quicker in 2022? And to the travel and hospitality industries, which recovery is more important?
Leisure definitely. Which is more important? Well, bigger ticket associated with business travel, as everyone knows. While business travel historically has only been about 30% of overall travel, right now it's only 12% of overall travel, and that's a big loss for a lot of companies. And all you gentlemen and ladies know, when you're traveling on expense report, you tend to eat better. So yeah.
That's our secret, Kathi. Shh.
Oh no, don't worry. That I think that applies to every businessman and woman in the entire planet, on the entire planet.
Oh yeah.
Can't blame PDMI for that one.
Come on, I take all my clients to Subway for lunch.
There you go. Carl's Jr. is a big favorite, you know.
I love it.
I think that to touch on what Kathi mentioned with leisure and with business and non-essential, from an anecdote of one, I was going to go to a business conference in Florida at the end of October. Nothing against Florida, but I opted not to go, and because it wasn't essential, and I didn't feel comfortable with some folks in my family life with me going in and getting that exposure. So that was a very easy decision for me to make. But to your point, Kathi, that's a lot of dollars lost in terms of my personal travel, going down to Florida with not only the travel, but also the restaurants and the hotel and everything that's accompanying with it.
Right.
And so that's going to be a really interesting spot in terms of recovery. I absolutely agree that leisure is going to come first. We actually traveled for leisure, right? In the summertime, we couldn't wait. Right? We were like, okay, off we go, right? We're going to fly, you know, my daughter and her boyfriend down for Thanksgiving, right? So we're actually engaging in travel for leisure, and we're excited about it, right? Because for a long time we couldn't go anywhere, and that was not an unusual story that I heard from a lot of people. For some reason, everyone in San Diego went to Hawaii this past summer. Just everybody went to Hawaii that we knew, but there was a lot of activity. So I absolutely agree, and I think that you see it from the statistics, but also I think our own personal stories and our own anecdotes actually give you some insight into how that goes. I mean, my decision to not go to a business meeting in Florida is probably amplified a million times throughout the country.
Definitely. I would agree with that. But it will, I mean, business travel will not go away. Business travel will change, and technology has changed it forever because, you know, here we are communicating and doing this on Zoom. We wouldn't have thought to do that a few years ago.
That's right.
So I think we got time for one more, and this one's a little bit off the beaten path in terms of the conversation that we had today, but right smack dab in the middle of the travel conversation. Post-pandemic, do you believe that the cruise industry has the potential to not only bounce back, but surpass where it was in the year 2019?
Shockingly enough, yes, I do. And that is based on observations, some moves that have been happening within the industry, and firsthand looking at our booking numbers. I personally am I love cruises, and I'm afraid to ever go on one again. So I thought this is a good example of why we can't use our own opinions. We need the numbers. What the numbers are showing us are people are interested. They miss cruising. They want to get back to cruising. That does not alleviate the fact that the cruise companies have a lot of work to do to make the general public feel that they are safe. But actually, that situation existed pre-pandemic. You know, there were several notable incidents of flus and Legionnaire's disease and those sorts of things swooping through major cruise ships, you know, several times over the preceding 5 years at least that I was paying attention to it, working in the industry. But yeah, demand for cruises is definitely coming back. And if they can crack that safety nut and that hygiene nut, then this is just my personal opinion, that'll make a cruise even more attractive because there's less risk in going on a cruise than on going into a large metropolitan city and going from place to place to place. So if you trusted, if you were worried about health and safety, and you trusted that your health and safety were well protected within the cruise environment, that might make it a more attractive option.
I love that. I think that putting that angle of protocol makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you say, you know, vaccinations are required or proof of negative COVID required before entering, so that everybody knows that on the ship, everybody is safe. If there's a way that they can reach that level of certainty of safety, then yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because I think a lot of people also just want to have a good time. I think a lot of people want to forget about a lot of the stuff that's happened over the last couple of years. And what better place to forget about all of it than on a cruise?
Agreed, totally agreed. And there is a lot of pent up demand for travel. We've all been overusing that phrase, pent up demand, but it is there. And people do want to travel, myself included. So,
All right, I'm going to jump back in here with you guys. Awesome session, Kathi, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. Today was an awful lot of fun. Folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite each and every one of you to join us for our next episode of PDMI Take 20, hosted Wednesday, October 27th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be continuing our conversation on the Back To series by talking about back to restaurants. That sounds yummy. Anyways, folks, thanks again for joining us today. Make it a great day and all the best.